Without alluding to anything in particular, let us take a definite case. Say that someone wishing to pass through the stages of initiation, or having already done so, has a personal relation to someone else based on immediate personal feeling and emotion. Let us suppose that this relation of a spiritual seer who is about to be initiated or has already made steps towards initiation is a definite personal relation between two human beings based on mutual attraction, such as it awakens in the life of the senses, possibly out of a confiding love, so that, and I mean this in the highest sense, there is physical interplay between the two. Let us assume something of this kind to be present, and the one who was a spiritual seer was wishing to make investigation about the person towards whom he felt thus attracted during sensory existence. Let us also suppose him to be unable to rid himself of all this love formed in sensory existence for the person in question. It would then be practically impossible for him to learn the truth about the supersensible being of such a personality. Oh, it is indeed necessary, however, much one may love, however close a personal attachment one may feel in sensory existence, or try perversely to cast it all aside when trying to observe the supersensible. It may be that one feels a personal attraction such as this, and does not free oneself from the kind of fondness for the said personality that one would have in sensory existence. I bet you're wondering why I'm bringing all this up. Okay, so here's the reason why, guys. They say that soon we're going to have these downloads and realize who we all are and what we've been in all these lifetimes. So we can see how, even in the groups that we travel in and those we love, it would be a trickier situation if all of a sudden these things were exposed. So we'll pick up. Then, before the eyes of the spiritual seer, pictures of the past and future of this personality will appear. For instance, that must unavoidably be false. Complete illusion may ensue. Therefore, anyone having a serious sense of responsibility in face of what is given from the realm of spiritual wisdom cannot be too careful when revealing to the world anything that happens in his own immediate circle, in the circle of those whom he is familiar. When there are indications of any occult results relating to what concerns the immediate person's circle of the investigator, it is always a safe rule to regard them as in the highest degree doubtful. Now, this is surely why questions go up when people do figure out who they are, and then other people's interpretations come in and they say, well, that can't be. We're just setting the story up. Okay. This is not said with reference to any particular fact, and that's because we cannot continue to take things personal. We have to look at it as a collective. It is merely said, and because for every occultist it is an objective fact. With this are connected, however, things that play throughout into higher spheres, one may say. With this is connected the fact that anyone wishing to make investigations into supersensible worlds is little adapted to get a basic conception of the right kind in relation to religious questions. If with his prejudice and personal feelings he is attached to any particular religious community, if he is more attached to one religious community than to another, or is indeed a propagandist of any religious community, one who has a leaning towards personally prompted propaganda can also not be an objective occultist. This is a statement that must indeed be made with all severity. There are conditions that we may be allowed to bring into relation with our karma of Western culture. In a certain sense, these make it not too difficult for a Westerner, when he has been made himself a little familiar with the basic demands of supersensible life, to form an objective judgment as to how we should place into human evolution the great event we call the mystery of Golgotha. I know that's something not too many people have heard of, and this is a new term, but we'll be defining that quite extensively. Okay. For how is it that so much of the darkness of life enters into religious life and into the way in which men understand it? Why does all that only wants to be concerned with the passing moment and has no wish to raise itself to the light of the Spirit and to all that is eternal enter religious life? Because everything related to religious life is intimately bound up with all things that are human egoism, not merely individual egoism, but the egoism of family, race, and people. From this point of view, and because there is a need that these things should be observed with complete lack of prejudice, let me call your attention to a particular phenomenon. Take one of Oriental descent. What part does his religious life play in regard to the founder of his religion when he considers the connection of his racial or national evolution? Consider whether it's easy for an Oriental or any other man who is not of the West to think historically about the course of history into which he placed without linking this historical life with men like Krishna, Buddha, Muhammad, or Confucius. Everywhere we see that, quite as a matter of course, what is in religious life is bound up with what takes place in profane external life and flows into the heart and soul of the people. It is impossible to imagine a Buddhist, for instance, writing a history without making Buddha the central point. This is not said as a criticism, but because it is true of the men who belong to such cultural evolutions. But let us go to the West and look, not at dogmas, but at facts. I shall pick out a recognized historian of the West, Leopold von Ranke, who is known throughout the world for his objectivity, his common sense of values, his quite an individual way of facing things objectively. Ranke had witnessed many chapters of historical evolution, but one remarkable thing had become known about him. He once, in the presence of a friend, revealed that he had so represented the course of history that he had never taken into account the Christ, nor the facts immediately associated with him. He went to a good deal of trouble to write a history of the West in accordance with the objective sense, without making Christ take part in it. In his old age, it cost him many pangs of conscience when he had to ask, if deeds flow into the actual historical happenings, for which there are no documents nor records, can this history be said to be true? This is not mentioned here to decide whether such a history is true or untrue. I hold it to be supremely justified, but because the best histories by one of the best recognized Western historians has been so written that Christ has been entirely omitted, that Christ was not included in the course. We do not always look up to the being who should stand forth as a central figure of all history. Had there been the right connections with him? It is not science that has led us to this. How has it come about? Let us throw light on this matter from another point of view. Where have the great founders of religion lived? Those who were the great initiates and who gave their people what they needed out of their national substance. Is it conceivable, for instance, that Hermes should have worked on his epoch through the substance of any other people? Or is it conceivable that Buddha should have worked in any other way than through the particular qualities of the race into which he was placed? Or should have sent his forces into them? Now let us turn our eyes to him whom we do not call an initiate, but know as a personality through whom initiation, cosmic initiation, has worked. Did he belong to any particular nation? He was born in an unknown corner of the world, far removed from great empires, and there the events were played out. Since the Gospels and other records of the New Testament cannot be looked upon as reliable historical records, it may be said that all of these events, none can be proved by documentary evidence. Those who joined him as pupils and disciples did so without distinction of family, race, or sex. This, then, is the difference, that whereas in former times the people looked to their racial initiates, here they turn to one who belonged to no people, who indeed accomplished his greatest deeds of culture among a people with whom he had not lived. Last week we discussed that the definition of true culture is when the adults are able to teach by example their babies to understand what a state of bliss is and to be able to bring it up in oneself. Okay. That is a great step forward out of darkness of light to the light of spirit that we must not misunderstand if we are in earnest about the evolution of mankind. Those are the things that are really to be considered. Things that have to be effectively pointed out by the science that can be drawn from real observation of supersensible worlds. From much that I have to be able to tell you, you will see how essential it is to have some understanding of what was said by the devil of Johannes Thomasius in The Guardian of the Threshold, quote, "Thinking has a purifying force." This purifying force of thinking really works in such a way that it leads us out of the darkness into spirit light. It leads us away from the passing moment into eternity. But it is not willingly admitted that thinking has this purifying force. There is, however, something strange about the occult nature of I chose a dogmatic religion at the age of 12, and by my mid-20s, I couldn't hang there because of the dogma. So, maybe that's why we're having so many problems current time. If all these other experiences that we've had are now flooding into us, you can see where these things would tear at you. And pretty much every war that's ever been fought has been over control and religion. So, I have a little story that I need to share. And we spoke about the guardian of the threshold in the book Initiation, Eternity, and the Passing Moment. Keep in mind, I didn't come across these books until in my 40s. But now I'm going to share a story with you from my 21st year. And of course, the 21st year is when the spirit comes to the forefront and asks the soul, are you going to keep learning and growing? Or do you know it all? What path will you take? So, back in 1985, I've shared with you guys that I hung out with this famous psychic, and her name was Mama Lil. She was really something, and I did love her, and I worked a few shows with her, actually. She had told me that I was going to be her legacy in the way I tell the story to you guys. I went running scared like a little bitch, but let's consider that I was just starting out and I was really a little too young. So they say that our higher selves can present itself as what's called the guardian of the threshold. And I did have that experience, so that's what I'm going to share. I'm in bed, sleeping, and all of a sudden I was awake. And my one leg was off the floor, straight up like this. And I saw a completely cloaked figure, so of course it looked dark and ominous and scary. And it surely didn't say anything, but I was wide awake. And of course our first thought is always to call for human help. So If I was a child, I would have called for my mom or dad. And of course, I lived with my grandmother, and she was old and drunk, so of course she couldn't give me any help in the spirit world, could she? Now, being that I was already friends with Mama Lil, I was in the practice of calling on the name of Jesus 3 times. And so when I tried to get voice out, no voice could come out. And of course, when we hear witness to things of the spirit realm, that is absolutely confirmed. And as I worked on it, I was able to get out, you know, please be with me, watch over me, and bring me through this safe. And my leg came down, and the whole thing was done. Depending on how you look at things, it would lead you to realize that I held myself back for a reason at that time, so I would be able, at a later time, to really be able to define what my experience was. I was still way too young. All right, from much that I have to be able to tell you, you will see how essential it is to have some understanding of what was said by the devil of Johannes Thomasius in The Guardian of the Threshold. Quote, thinking has a purifying force. This purifying force of thinking really works in such a way that it leads us out of the darkness into spirit light. It leads us away from the passing moment into eternity. But it is not willingly admitted that thinking has this purifying force. There is, however, something strange about the occult nature of thinking. A materialist science imagines that man thinks with his brain. That is simply an error. If you appreciate the whole meaning of what is said in A Road to Self-Knowledge, you will also understand that the process and activity of thinking, the combining and working out of ideas, do not take place in the physical body, but in the etheric body. In truth, in ordinary life also, man thinks with his etheric body, but the fact that he is in ordinary life precludes his having any knowledge of the activity that takes place within him when he thinks with his etheric body. Fundamentally, man is always thinking. His etheric body is always in motion, and it is this motion that constitutes thinking. But of all this activity in the etheric body, it is only the reflection that comes into consciousness. You must conceive of certain relation of the etheric body to the physical body somewhat in the following way. Assume that you are walking down this hall beneath this row of windows, and that mirrors were hanging on the walls between each. I lost my place, sorry about that. Assume that you were walking down the hall beneath this row of windows, and that mirrors were hanging on the walls between each window. As you pass the first mirror, you see your face. Where there is no mirror, you do not see your face. But as you go on, you again see it, for there is another mirror that throws its image back to you. Your face is there all the way along, but you only see it when it is reflected. The etheric body is in a perpetual flow of thought, but it only becomes perception when the brain and the physical body reflects what is going on in the etheric body. This etheric body is there all the time, but a man ordinarily knows nothing of it. It is reflected by the brain, which is to be regarded as an instrument of reflection, and whenever life is reflected, it becomes conscious. That is why the physical body must be there, so that the etheric body, which actually does the thinking, may know something of this thinking. The brain itself, however, does not think, nor does the physical body. This thinking has its seat in the etheric body, and what a man perceives in his brain is just as little his thinking as what appears in the mirror as you. When a man wishes to take the first steps towards initiation, It is in truth as if you passed before all the mirrors, trying all the time to be inside yourself, and then became capable of experiencing what your form was like, so that you would perceive yourself outwardly, actually from within. I think one of the reasons why I can take this path with Steiner is because, as I've confessed to you guys, I have no religious dogma, and I guess that was easier for me to do than some people, because I wasn't indoctrinated into a religion in those early years, where I didn't realize that there was any other life besides what people told me there was. I chose a dogmatic religion at the age of 12, and by my mid-20s, I couldn't hang there because of the dogma. So maybe that's why we're having so many problems current time. If all these other experiences that we've had are now flooding into us, you can see where these things would tear at you. And pretty much every war that's ever been fought has been over control and religion. So, I have a little story